All right, here we go. All right, it's the Lex and Pete show. We've got special guests, one-time champion, inaugural champion, Matt McMorrow, manager of Carson Wentz, laughing, crying emoji. We've got him on the show to talk about some deadline stuff. We're also going to do the power rankings at this point. We're in week 11. This will be power rankings 6.0, I believe. We'll get to that at the end of the show. And we've got a couple of things sprinkled in between. But as always, we'll start with a word from our sponsors, Sundog Multimedia. Sundog Multimedia is an online communication and social media company. They were once just a personal tool that has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to help build a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow them on Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism. That's easy peasy moving and service, moving, muscle for hire, assembly, errands, you name it. Easy peasy is a multi-purpose team. Need something? Just ask. All right, so as I've said, we've got our inaugural champion, one of our two league champions, Matt McMorrow, on the show to talk about his deadline. Of course, that was one of the teams that we were really watching around the deadline. And if you're in this league, I'm sure that you know he did not make any moves. So he's on to, maybe just go over some of what he experienced in the deadline, what went into his maybe not accepting some trades that were sent his way, maybe not pursuing some different deals. But we'll start with you, McMorrow. How are you feeling? How does it feel to finally be on the show?
Feels awesome. I'm so happy to be here. Longtime fan, longtime follower. Been in this league since the start of it. Only a handful of guys in here can say that. So I'm happy to be here. Happy to be active in the chat, and good group of guys we have. So I enjoy it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. Pete, how are you feeling? Because for me, it feels like I'm almost setting up two of my friends on a blind date. I feel like you guys have been talking. You guys have been in cahoots for a long time. At some points, I almost have to remind myself that McMorrow is my friend. I am who brought him into this league, into everybody's lives. It's starting to feel like Pete's maybe stealing him away from me. Pete, how are you feeling? Finally,
I mean, it's not an exclusive thing. McMorrow's a great guy. We have some similar interests. We talk. I like his energy. He likes mine. We go back and forth. There's no friend stealing. We can all be boys here. But
that's true. It's true. There's plenty to go around.
I do got a funny story. Keep it quick. So I was driving. My girlfriend Laura was in the car. She looks over my phone, light goes on. She goes, "Who's Slippery Pete?" I'm like, "Oh God, how much time you got?" That's my book. So I just wanted to get that one out there.
You got to tell her one of a kind, never replicated, never duplicated. Imitation isn't flattery. It's just annoying me.
Yeah, I think anybody that knows Pete and also has a girlfriend has had that point in time where they either ask, "Who is Slippery Pete? Why do you call him Slippery Pete?" Anything like that. It's always tough. You always got to figure out a good way to explain it that doesn't make us look like total lunatics, I guess.
KB, I will say we're only a couple minutes into the show here, and you can just already feel the positivity. You can feel the energy. I mean, McMorrow brings just a great presence. Yeah. We've had some guests on that, come out here to beef, belittle, undermine each one of us maybe, but I don't know, it just feels good. Vibes are up.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was thinking too, was we bring McMorrow on and we were originally coming in and we were kind of having negative thoughts about how we felt he should have managed his team around the deadline. But I also felt like there was going to be a moment where McMorrow maybe just disarms us and I say, "Yeah, you know what? it's a little too hard. I'll take it easy on the lad." But
yeah, I'll let you go in. And
I think we have some interesting things to look at, and I feel like how I feel has kind of simmered down a little bit. I just hit publish on my winners and losers at the deadline deal or blog. I have to send it over to Jeremy to get on the link tree because you know how hard it is to post a link in this chat, I guess. I will say, McMorrow, and this is how we could start our discussion. I did mark you. I did write you down as a loser at the deadline, but I can read what I said. And I started it with, "I'm hesitant to call McMorrow's team a deadline loser because maybe I'm just projecting my own desires onto his team. But fuck it, this is my blog." I really wanted to see McMorrow unload his running backs this past week because I felt he could get some insane returns that would completely reshape his team. Instead, he chose to stand with what won him a ring 2 seasons ago. I'm certainly not counting his team out of the race for the championship. As Tractor Ceto season heats up, we could see McMorrow or we could see Carson Wentz ride the backs of that stable one last time. And honestly, I'm rooting for it. It's a risky play as it becomes harder to trade it back with each passing season, but it could all be worth it as it ends in ring number 2. I just think the potential return was too great to pass up. And if the playoff run is a flop, this could be a huge regret for a once proud franchise. How does that critique of your team at the deadline, how does that make you feel?
I think that's a pretty accurate statement. I think I'm on the bubble here. I'm trying to make my way, and I feel like the points for like if I noticed this today. What am I 7-3? But the way this league is set up, I always tell Pete, what do I say? This is a points for league.
It's a points for league.
So you got to manage your expectations. Some weeks, my team goes off. Some weeks it doesn't. But it's just very hit or miss. So I knew I should do something. I knew I wanted to pursue moving something. And like I was telling Pete, I like doing things all in or no in. So my approach to this was if I'm not moving all three running backs, including Pollard and Zeke together, or if I move Cousins or Daniel Jones or whoever, all at once. I want all those offers in my inbox, except, just to get a full rebuild. And then with the offers I was seeing, where I was shopping who to where, didn't really get the sense that the team next year would be any better off than it currently is, where it's standing with these running backs. I know they're old, but I think there's another year there for them. If not, repeat this process next year.
Yeah, and I think that's fair because I think that, with Dynasty, and I feel like since we're such a new league and how we've been so spoiled with some of these draft classes, I think people do expect, maybe things to move a little too fast, right? Whether that's rookies to develop right away, and if a rookie's not Justin Jefferson in their rookie season, then, all of a sudden you have your concerns when we forget that, only a few seasons ago, it was totally normal. Like a Devontae, I always go back to Devontae Smith, right? He had, I think, like 800, 900 yards. He had, 5 or 6 touchdowns. And like, that's like a very good rookie season, but people always expect so much more because of what we've seen from some recent rookies. And I feel like you can also say the same thing with the other side of the age spectrum, where now all of a sudden it's like, once you get to like 25, 26, like, especially for running backs, people just think that once you get to that second contract, you like fall off. But we've seen so many of these guys, and your running backs are the perfect example of that, where guys like Henry, who was, I believe, 29, you got Dalvin Cook's like 27, Zeke's about the same age. These are still guys where, they're still putting up these huge numbers. Derrick Henry is still very elite. Dalvin Cook maybe isn't top 5 right now, but he's still that top 10 discussion. And Zeke, of course, he's been slowly taking steps back each season, but he's still been highly productive. And then you've also had that handcuff and Pollard waiting in the wings. So I feel like, you can still survive by riding this out one more season, but it's just like, and it's the same thing I said with Angelo's team, where it's just, because you're so built around running backs, and not only because of how these running backs age with just the natural aging progression, but also the injury risk, but also the perception with the age and in the position, it can be so much tougher. So it's like at some points, maybe it is kind of worth just pulling out, a second sooner, just to be, a day early rather than a day late. But at the same time, I'm not counting your team out of this because of what your running backs are capable of and what we've seen with the same roster construction and how it's been able to win. I'm not counting you out. I do just think it's a risky play. Before we dive deeper into it, Pete, what's your take on kind of my write-up with McMorrow's team? And then, what's also just your personal take on how we acted around the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose between winner or loser on the deadline, I guess I would go loser, but I'm not saying that confidently. And it's honestly like, it's not black and white with this team. With McMorrow, we've been talking about it all year, right? For the first 7 or 8 weeks, it was like McMorrow's dead. The team is dead. He needs to sell. He needs to sell. He needs to sell. And then we kind of flipped the script last week where we were like, even if McMorrow is going to sell, like who's really buying? Like who is really buying right now? And it didn't feel like the interest was like giving him overwhelming value in return for it. So like I think it comes down to what he was actually offered. Like what if he's a winner or a loser, it depends on what he was actually offered.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into these offers in a second too. I will say I think that the Most Athletic Sons were in a similar spot, just with the fact that it's running backs and that type of thing. But I think that they were way bigger losers at the deadline because
Definitely.
with your guys, one, you can still put together a good team based around these players, these running backs that you have, but also they are still going to have trade value after the season where, you look at who Angelo had, and, you're talking about guys like,
Brady.
Tom Brady, of course, who's now constantly a threat to retire. And I do not buy into the whole thing that because he's now divorced, he's going to play until he's 60. I think that this could partially play into him certainly retiring after this year. Cause it's like, what the hell did I do? I came back for all this. I got to go get my life back. But also just like the running backs, guys like James Conner, guys like
Patterson.
Deontay Foreman, right? These are guys, Cordell Patterson, exactly. Like these are guys where, after the season, they really might not have trade value because they barely had trade value now. So so for a team like the Suns, who I think definitely have to go into a rebuild, and they made that trade for CeeDee Lamb, I think that signals that that's certainly where they're heading as well. I think that you just have to say, fuck it. Even if this is not an appealing trade, if I can get, a second rounder for Cordell Patterson, or if I can get a second rounder for Brady, or 224 second rounders, which is an offer that I heard was out there for Brady, you just have to take it because you have to say, well, it's diminishing returns with where my team's at, with where these players are at, with their age and their ability. I got to get out of that. I think that, as I was writing this blog, I definitely became way softer on McMorrow because of that, because, he could still put together a good team. So, like I said, I think that we were coming in here thinking that we were going to rip them apart, but now that I look at it, I think I'm indifferent to it. But let's pull up some of these trades, right?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
Because I want to, from my perspective, how you're saying, some teams should go here, there. When I was doing my initial, take on this, I was seeing, all right, who needs a running back? And then so I went through every team when on the website, how it does the full table of who has what, who has picks where.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going through teams. I'm looking at Big Brain, running back stacked. No need for them. Like no need for me to hit them up, see if they need anything. I know we'll get to it. Zach, I don't know if he was the one looking for Brady for 2 seconds, but so he had some offers for some of my quarterbacks. I don't know what the Athletic Suns were doing there, if that was them. But that's a move that he could have made but like I was looking at who needed what, where to puzzle my story together.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, so the team, and I'll say this because I hope that this is a message that gets through to the Suns, but it was Big Brain. The Suns actually offered Tom Brady to Big Brain for 24 seconds. So I was talking to Big Brain because I just wanted to see, who was shopping for Brady, what kind of offers were out there, because I was just curious if they were not getting anything or if they were just, maybe turning things down because of maybe a lack of perception with the value. So they offered that. And I thought that was a pretty good deal. I thought that's a pretty fair offer for Brady, between, them and a contender and everything. The problem was Big Brain, they felt it was actually too late in the season. And this was a conversation I had with Jalot at the Brewfish. Before the season, we just played some golf. We were getting some beers at the Broof. And I was saying, this is a guy where everybody knows what Brady is. Like, what value are you hoping to recoup by holding on to him and waiting until the deadline, right? And he was saying, well, a quarterback will go down and somebody will need a quarterback. Ironically, they lost Dak early in the season and they were the ones that needed a quarterback. But it was just like, even if you're holding on to Brady and you're hoping that you can get a 10% value increase over the course of the season, what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things, right? So I felt like, they should have really traded him early in the season, because now all of a sudden Big Brain's getting this deal and they're telling me that they just felt like it was too late because Brady, he has the bye week coming up. And then, you're just getting a quarterback that's QB 20 right now, for 4 or 5 weeks. And it's like, what's really the point of giving up too much for that? Especially when Big Brain, they have Rodgers, they have Garoppolo, they have Tannehill, and these are guys that are really putting up the same amount of points as Brady. So it's like, they just got left holding the bag. I think that's going to end up being the case for them, whether it's, Brady retires after this year or after next year. So I think that they're kind of screwed. And if Brady does come back, they're just going to have to accept they can only get pennies for him if they want to, still try and trade him. But yeah, I mean,
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll open the question, Pete. You're free to answer too. I know you talk about quarterbacks and diminishing value as the deadline approaches. Do you think that's the same way when it comes to older running backs, receivers, tight ends, or is that different with the younger guys as well? Like, because I went through this too, thinking about the beginning of the season. When should I move? I was talking to Pete, like I'm on this board. Do I go in? Do I go out? Do I sell? Do I this? And it kind of has me thinking when the deadline hits. I had a DM from someone, not going to name names, I could, about King Henry. His value will never be as high as it is right now at this moment.
That sounds like a Bowen text.
No, it wasn't a Bowen text. I don't drop names, but it had me thinking, like, I don't know.
So Pete, what do you think?
Did I wait too long? Did it go down to the point? Like, is it at the highest point? It's only going to keep going down because he must have been more expensive at the beginning of the season.
I think it's always like we're talking about Derrick Henry's like abstract value in a dynasty league, right? I think you almost got to look at it like in our league context now, right? Like whatever offers you got for Henry this year, there's no way you're going to get a higher offer next year.
Right.
So like that is now the ceiling of his value in our league. It might be higher in other dynasty leagues, but like the offers you got, that is the value now. Like because the buyers that were going after Henry probably going to be the same buyers next year.
But now is that the value? Say call it week 11 at the deadline or week 1 of the season, you get an extra 11 games out of it.
Yeah. So
value, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's sort of like a crapshoot. Like you got to find someone who's hot on them at the time, I think.
Yeah, because I don't think that's really something that you could predict with a guy like Henry, right? Because where you were at where you were at, it was still worth it for you in week 1 to see where you were at, right? Like I think with 100%. Where your team was, it was worth seeing what you had, and then at that point, it's like, what's really the difference of making the trade in week 6 versus week 10, right?
Right.
So I think that desperation, that the deadline does breed desperation, and I don't really think that you cost yourself much by not making the deal in week 1 versus week 10, right? I mean, I think that maybe we're talking like an extra 3rd rounder or something, but I still think that I think that maybe if you were truly looking to trade this year and trade at this deadline, I think maybe you got unlucky just based off of how the season has played out, where we had 3 teams that were kind of out of it early, where Pete and Amaral, they were always looking ahead to next year and beyond. I just had that early bad luck with the injuries, and I was quickly just way out of the race. And then a team like Wallace, and then he's not really in it, and he's just not really looking to make a move like that, I should say, for his team. So it's like where it just became so polarizing, where we had 4 teams that were so in it, 4 teams that were so out of it, and then you had the Suns, and you had both Bowen teams and everything, where they're maybe in a position to make that trade, but how much do they want to give up, because how much does it really fill that gap between those top teams? So I feel like last year, if it played out kind of like last year or the year before, where it seemed like it was way more open, and it was maybe a little more parity, then you would have had better luck. But I don't really think that you cost yourself much by waiting until the deadline. I thought that was the right play for you. I think it just also happened that like you said, Big Brain wasn't really looking to do it. I don't really know how much Simcoe could really afford to give up, because he's really kind of married to just like the team that he has, right? And I know that he was throwing around Pitts and DJ Moore, but I think the big thing that held him back was that he didn't have picks, so he couldn't really attach anything. And all of a sudden, who wants to really make a deal for Pitts? Obviously, if you want to try and buy low, then it's a great opportunity to do so. But it's like we're seeing Pitts and Moore just have like these like so seasons that it's like, I don't know if this is necessarily the deal that I wanted to make. And I had that same thing when I was trying to trade Swift, where I was getting, Pitts in an offer, but then I'm like, that just feels like a 1-for-1 swap. And that's not, I'm looking to get a haul.
You're looking to get something more.
Those hauls were there last year. Like I sold Mixon to Big Brain for two first rounds, 222 first rounds. I forget who sold Gibson to Two Pains, but they bought Antonio Gibson for 3 first-round picks. Like there were a ton of buying last year. We just didn't see it this year.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I don't think that you really made any type of mistake by holding on. I think that it just also came down to what type of assets the teams have, and maybe it was just in between week 1 and week 10, it was just maybe too many deals went down and too many assets got changed hands, where all of a sudden the teams that could have been buyers for you maybe couldn't have made those offers that you really needed to get. And all of a sudden, if you're looking to get picks, the teams that have the picks, they're kind of committed to the rebuild. So why would they be looking to get a guy like, Derrick Henry, right? Like why would Pete or I be trading for Derrick Henry? It just wouldn't seem to make too much sense. So
it kind of sounds like we're supporting his decision here, KB. Like everything we just said kind of is on his side.
Yeah. So I think that now that we're kind of the pendulum swinging towards McMorrow's side, I think we have to bring it back just a tiny bit, maybe ground him a little bit, because there's one offer that I think we really want to talk about. I'd say in criticism of McMorrow, and then I think that there's about a dozen offers that we could talk about in defense of McMorrow as well. But we're going to start with this first one just because I really want to. I want to get inside your head real quick, and I want to hear your reasons for. First, I want to hear you confirm that this was truly an offer that you received. Carson Wentz would be getting, or I should say, they'd be giving up Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, and in return, they'd be getting Terry McLaurin, Gabe Davis, Javonte Williams, and a 2-pins 2023 first-round pick. Slippery Pete sent us that deal. Wouldn't shock me if it was Photoshop. It was suspiciously cropped. So I would like to ask you, get it straight from the source. Was that a real-life offer?
Yes, that was a real life offer. You know,
no trust.
I'll say it, real offer. When I hear it out loud, like that's a decent size, pretty big package. I get it. I understand. When I was talking to Pete, I was like, I want to retool, not rebuild, and I really wanted to go after Javonte. Part of me was like, maybe he doesn't come back the way he should. You know, we've seen. I was also hitting up. Lamar in the shits. I was talking about J.K. Dobbins. You know, is he on the block? You know, I even hit up Wallace. I don't know if he was in or out, whatever. Brees Hall. I'll pay a first and whatever you want. I'll do what gets me there next year. And I didn't want to go in on a hurt running back after giving up the 2 cores, because then I'm relying on either the draft or Zeke and Pollard to share that 2 spot. So I didn't want to give up both in that offer, you know?
Yeah.
So the original offer that I sent over was Javonte, Terry, and a second for Derek and a third. I think both of them were 2024 picks. And it kind of got a little, we were looking about going for more than that offer. And it started getting a little nickel and dimey, you know, 2 seconds, this, that. I'll let you know. And that offer kind of fizzled out. But I thought that was where I would have liked to commit before then I started shopping Dalvin, you know, and went down that path, went down other options. So that's the full story there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was just one of those where, you know, we caught wind of it, and you know, that was just one where we were like, oh shit. Because I mean, not only that, but it's like, you know, I get very excited when I see these types of deals, because I like just seeing, you know, a ton of big assets just change hands, because that completely changes not just a landscape for your team, but it changes the landscape of the league. Because then all of a sudden, say you're trying to get this first rounder or this player from a guy, and he just doesn't want to give him up. All of a sudden somebody else has him, and you're like, oh shit, well, now they have a different perspective. It's a completely clean slate when it comes to the trade talks. All of a sudden, If I like a guy like Terry or you know, a guy like Gabe Davis, who's been so hard to get just because of the breakout that he's had since last year's playoffs, you're like, well, maybe I can try with this, you know, new team that has him. And all of a sudden, and here we go, Derrick Henry's going on a huge run. But
are you ahead of me?
Oh, am I a little ahead of you? Is that?
I don't know.
I haven't seen it yet.
I might be like a player. They're first and goal right now. Yeah,
I got
way
second
ahead of
and
you.
5. I got second and 5.
He's number 85.
Oh wow, I got that. I got that nice stream. I got that good connection. But yeah, I mean, I just felt like that was, you know, it was such a great trade to me, because it felt like, you know, you're just kind of stuck at receiver, right? Deontay Johnson has been a great talent for his first few years in the league. He's kind of stalled out a little bit with the new quarterback, and I think that
100%.
the OC is really the problem there, Matt Canada. I think once he's gone, I think that they'll move on from him in the offseason, start to open things up a little bit. But then, you know, you got guys like Allen Robinson, and then Robert Woods, and you know, especially if you're looking to get younger, it's like, you know, all of a sudden you get Terry McLaurin, who's like right at that breakout age, Gabe Davis, who's so young and he's such a touchdown threat, and a first rounder, like that's such a good return. And I understand the concerns, because I think JK is a good comparison to Javonte. I don't know exactly how their injuries compare, but just from what I quickly read, you know, I think when it first happened was that you could kind of expect a similar recovery, because I don't think it was all clean. I think you might have had a few things, right? It was like the ACL, and then, you know, maybe tears. I think maybe like like the quad tendon or something. Or that might have been
LCL.
J.K. Dobbins' thing. Yeah, and so it's like, there could be a little bit where you see how J.K. came back, right, and how he was dunking all over Rappaport and saying, "Oh, I'm not going to the PUP list. I'm not starting the season on IR." And then look at him, right? I mean, he did miss the first few weeks. He did come back. I think he just had a heavy touchdown game, but I don't think his yardage was too great. And then all of a sudden he's back on the IR. So it is tough, right? It is scary. Everybody thinks, oh, ACL injuries, these guys just come right back and it's really no problem anymore. But you do see like there's certainly rust that comes back. And then when it becomes more than just the ACL, that can make it a little messy. But at the same time, it's like, he's so young and he was just so good that it's like, I don't know. It was just tough. But I mean, I will say, of all the trade offers that I've seen, and like I said, there's literally a dozen more that I've also seen. Sources have told, friends who gamble media, at least, where I think we could start to go through those. I feel like we covered this.
Just
right?
one more thing. I want to say that one was the one I was considering. Like when you say it out loud, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my God, you should have accepted it." Like what? But part of me too was thinking like, Derek's been good this year. Dalvin's been fine. I'm living or dying by sucking at receiver. And you know what? That got me through the first year. I made the playoffs last year with it. I got to figure that out. And I tried, I went looking for Lockett or like an older guy to fill that spot for me. Just points. I needed points in that spot. And, that's what I'm going to have to address this offseason through either through the draft or whatnot. But I think that's I'd rather live or die by lacking at receiver than at running back. Because I feel like
you do have your first round.
Place, it was a little bit of a, where would I be next year? I could fill out a little bit more of a lineup with keeping them.
Yeah, and you have your first round or two, and you have other picks, and you have a future 24 first as well. So it's like you do have the flexibility to make some moves, maybe look to trade up. And if things don't work out, like right now, I think you are the 7th team when it comes to the wild card race. I'm not sure. That's just off the top of my head, but so if you can sneak in and it's one of those, it's kind of like what we said when Wallace was on the thing, right? Where he has his pick. So if he sneaks into the playoffs and he goes on a run, then it's like, word, like that was just a crazy season. And then if it all kind of comes crumbling down, then it's like, all right, you just got a better pick. And whether that's you ending up in the lottery and being in the top 6, or if you're just a first round exit, then it's like, all right, you're still a top 8 pick. And, you're still going to be able, just based off of the mock draft that I'm currently drafting, you're still going to be able to get, what seems to be a pretty solid wide receiver prospect, especially with how, the current draft order unfolds. So it's not like you can't, you're going to be unable to address it. Like you definitely have that ability. I think that maybe next year it's one of those where you might not be able to get fantastic value for these running backs in the offseason, but it could be one of those things where week 1 comes around, Derrick Henry puts up 20 points again. People are like, all right, he's still good. Then you can still unload him. You can still probably get good value. And it might not be, this great package that we had just seen. But it could certainly be better than some of these offers that you did get. And, you could still get a return that I think you'll be satisfied with. So, it's just, I think it's more of just a risky game. And I think, when it comes to it, I would be a little more risk averse, and I just say, fuck it. I don't feel totally confident this year. I'll just get out of it and see what I can get. But, at the same time, if the deals aren't there, then, the deals aren't always there. Pete, you got anything else before we dive into some of these?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it needs to be said. Like, I personally think that's a smash accept on the trade. Like, I get what you're saying it out loud, McMorrow, but just to one more time, Javonte Williams, Terry McLaurin, Gabe Davis, 23 first for Cook and Henry. This is the lowest you'd ever buy on Javonte Williams. Bargain bin in this deal, I think. Terry McLaurin's a great wide receiver. Wide receiver 1, dominant in the league. He just needs a quarterback. He's kind of in that DJ Moore situation where he's got the skills. He just doesn't have a quarterback. He'll probably get a new one next year. Javonte Williams, ACL and LCL. I'm not really worried about the compounding injuries. Personally, 3 ACL surgeries. The LCL doesn't matter. LCL hides under the rug of an ACL injury. I'm not worried about Javonte's rebound. Melvin Gordon's on a 1-year deal. He owns that backfield next year. And this is a super, super heavy running back class. Like, you're going to get, even if that Tupin's pick was like 110, 111, you're still going to get a running back that probably would have been like RB3 this year or RB4 this year in the 22 class. So when I look at it, I see you getting much younger, much better wide receiver with Gabe Davis and Terry McLaurin. That said, I don't really like Gabe Davis. He's wide receiver 18 right now. He's kind of a boomer bust guy. I don't really like him, but still, it's better than the guys you got. And then you
100%.
get Javonte Belcow and then 2 picks in the first that shot at going back to that running back. So, yeah, like I told you when we were talking about it, smash accept for me. But I think the bigger deal here is like this was so on display for the entire league in the group chat that, and now we're doing this. So like
Yeah.
it's capped like that. The value for those guys, I feel like, are capped and won't hit that same package next year just because of how our league is. And I just think that's how it is.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the same thing with dynasty leagues in general. Like off the start, people will pay more than
Right.
what there's actually worth because you actually learn how to value things more. Like everyone treats, or at least I've seen, like 2023 firsts are gold. Like they're worth everything right now.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know. I see what you're saying, but if it's capped, it's capped. Try to make a run at it next year. What else do you want me to do?
Right, exactly.
I was confident, or not confident, but I was looking forward to this
And
year.
yeah, I just said
No way.
Antonio Gibson went for 3 first-round picks last year. Like you could make out with something like that next year. Who knows?
100%.
Yeah, but that's also something too where I feel like we've kind of been saying this, but the league kind of learns from other mistakes, right? And I think everybody looks
100%.
back at that Gibson trade and says that was a mistake.
Yeah.
And that was a huge
Monumental
overpay. So it's like it's also kind of it makes teams maybe a little nervous to maybe go back to it and say, well, we saw how this played out, so maybe I shouldn't do the same. So it just make it a little tough. And sometimes it's just, you're just lucky to be the first one to do it, and because nobody's going to be able to do it again, right? But yeah, I mean, I think we kind of close the door on that and just maybe look at some of these deals that you got, and maybe just go through a couple of them, get some thoughts on them. So one that really stood out to me, and we had a debate on whether or not we should air out some of this dirty laundry, but some of these deals that I saw were just so offensive that I have no problem saying it. One that truly stuck out to me was an offer from Big Brain, but it looks like it specifically came from Lord of Beans. They offered to send you a 2024 second, or I'll say, because this what you'd be getting in return is just so preposterous to me. They wanted to get Daniel Jones, and in return, they wanted to trade you the Most Athletic Sons 2024 second and 100 fab.
They wanted to give me an Andy Dalton.
Yeah, that's how we can look at it. They wanted to trade you for Daniel Jones, 24 second and Andy Dalton.
That's the one I was talking to Pete. I don't know. Let me just keep going here. That might have been a little old. That might have been pre-deadline. If I just want to confirm, I don't want to.
Well, I mean, even if that trade's still 2 weeks out, it's still relevant. Like you're still in your situation where you're deciding what you're going to do with
this. This does say a month ago. I'm seeing right next to it.
All right, so we can cut them, I guess, a little slack. But at the same time, we're talking about 100 fab and call it week 6, right? Where I'd say a bunch of the good resources when it comes to waiver wire pickups are pretty dried up by then, because
they were dried up in the preseason.
Anyone that's either a good handcuff or is suddenly being thrust into a starting role because of an injury, who they are, whether they're already playing or that they're going to be next up in case of an injury. I feel like they're already scooped up by then. I don't think there were too many huge waiver wire pickups after that. I mean, maybe I guess you could talk about Sam Ellinger, and that clearly didn't work out too well for
Hopefully we get to that one at some point.
I don't want to say what just happened, but my son may have just done it again.
Christian Watson? No.
He is a touchdown machine at this point.
Oh, well, we're gonna get the replay. Oh, well, next play.
I might just hold the.
After the drop?
I might just hold it up here. I might just show you guys.
Oh my God, they're kicking.
Oh man.
Oh no.
Look at this.
If I could bet on that and then watch it here, that would be crazy.
Yeah. You're gonna like the Bovada server or something. All right. All right. So Pete, what we got any more comments on that Big Brain trade? You got any trades that really stood out to you?
It's fucking disgusting out of Big Brain. I would expect nothing less. I don't even care what the deal is. To put $100 fab in a trade offer is insulting and disgusting. Like it's actually disgusting. Like they think $100 fab is going to sway you to give up your starting quarterback for a second-round pick. It's just, I talked about last week, Big Brain's the king of nickel and diming. I caution everyone I hold highly in this league to not work with Big Brain. McMorrow, I gave you that advice a couple weeks ago. And for good reason. They nickel and dime. They think that these small little pieces of garbage is going to add up to a pile of something that you want. And it's actually just a stinky pile of poop. Big brain, big brain. It's insulting. It's revolting, and I would expect nothing less. I'd expect nothing less from the Lord of Beans.
Yeah, and I think that's what really stood out to me the most is I didn't realize that when it was coming from a team with multiple owners, you could actually see who sent the deal. But
Yeah.
just seeing Lord of Beans at the top of the screen, it really just gave me a good
fat.
hearty chuckle because I know exactly what was coming from those just soft, feeble hands, as he clicked through the screen to send that trade. It really did disgust me. I just felt like it was a slap in the face. And if I were you, McMorrow, I would take serious offense to that.
I did. I rejected it right away.
And I will say they were all over the quarterback market. They were trying to get Tua from me, and I said, I wasn't looking to trade Tua. If you sent me an offer that I truly couldn't refuse, then it is what it is. They sent me an offer that included a bunch of things, and all I could see was 2024 second, 2025 second. I said, I don't even have to look at the rest of this trade. I'm going to turn that down.
Yeah.
Pete, were there any other trades that stuck out to you? Any that you found particularly stinky, or maybe any that you would maybe look at and ask McMorrow, what were you thinking? Why didn't you go through with this?
I mean, so for the listeners here, we're looking at a set of 12 deals that McMorrow was offered. She rejected all of them from a combination of Simcoe, Suns, Bowen, and Big Brain. And like Bowen, I just think it needs to be said that Bowen's out of control. Like these deals make no sense for McMorrow's team. It's a bunch of garbage. Like it looks like Bowen was just unseriously tinkering around. So I think all of his deals are irrelevant. I actually think like Simcoe's offers were pretty good. He was trying to move. I'm looking at one right now. He was trying to send you DJ Moore, Kyle Pitts, and 24 seconds for Derrick Henry and Mark Andrews. I think that's fair. I wouldn't take it if I was McMorrow, but I think it's fair depending on how high you are on Moore and Pitts, and if you believe Carolina can get a quarterback next year and turn it around. But McMorrow, did you consider that deal at all? DJ Moore, Kyle Pitts, and 24 seconds for Henry and Andrews?
This is where multiple leagues kind of hurt things. I have Moore and Pitts in another league, so I'm dealing with that right now.
You don't want, yeah.
So on the same team, same dynasty team. So I don't want to double dip on that. So I rejected it. Offer was what it was, but I couldn't force
Yeah,
it.
I will say we do have a few Simcoe offers in here, and none of them really stuck out to me as egregious at all. I felt like they were kind of fair, but I think this was kind of an issue that Simcoe ran into when he was trying to get Swift from me, where I think that just his lack of picks kind of limits him, right? So, if you're not all the way sold on Moore and Pitts, then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know, because like I was saying earlier, when I was looking at, potentially Swift or Pitts, it's just I feel like I'm kind of just putting the same value into a different position, right? These are two, young studs, and they could really break out and be cornerstones of a team, but it just, I'm looking to get more out of it, right? And I think you're the same way with these running backs. You're not looking to just get one good player. You're looking to get multiple players and multiple pieces that you can help build your team with. And, when you can't when you can't add those premier draft picks, especially when you're just talking about 24 seconds, not even 23 seconds, it just makes it a little tough to sell somebody on a deal. So I think Simcoe's offers were fair given what he has, but at the same time, I can't really fault you for rejecting them. And but I think it's one of those where if it did go through, it would just be like, yeah, it seems pretty fair for both sides, given the intentions. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, anything else that you got, Pete or McMorrow? Anything that you want to add?
I'd say playoff picture. I know we're gonna go to power rankings, KB, but McMorrow, you are currently in the playoffs. You're the 6th ranked team. You're 7th in points for.
Yeah, it's points for league. Oh, also there's one more. I don't know if we're leaking dirty laundry still.
Oh, keep going.
Clyde for Pollard. Straight up.
Oh,
what do you got in Dynasty?
You know what? I'm glad you brought it up. I did want to talk about that one.
Because I had Clyde straight up, and there was another one I saw just scrolling here for Pollard straight up, I thought.
I know. I see Dobbins for Henry.
Yeah.
I see Stafford for Cousins.
Everyone's gonna think you're in my account. You're logged in right now.
I mean, so one thing I'll say about the Clyde for Dobbins one. When was that sent? Was that a deadline offer?
Let me scroll up.
Because either way, right? I mean, I think it's just like a lesson that teams have to learn when you're in dynasty. And I think that, Jalou and Sam,
Yes,
they're still,
yes, 3 days ago.
yeah, they're still fairly new to it, right? And I think
100%.
they have to learn that when you have these guys like Clyde, where you know that their value is so low, and you have to be able to recognize that there really isn't a pathway for them to bounce back, right? If I was a Clyde owner this summer, and I did have Clyde in the offseason, I traded him very early. And that was one of those where I just was like, I have to just get off him. If I can get anything decent for him, I'm going to take it. And if you had Clyde at the time of training camp and you see him losing first team reps to Isaiah Pacheco, that should be an immediate red flag, because Pacheco was what? He was a 7th round pick. I mean, he was almost Mr. Irrelevant. I believe he was the 30th pick of the 2nd round. Clyde was the 32nd pick of the 1st round. In no world should he be sacrificing first team touches in practice to Isaiah Pacheco, right? And when you watch Pacheco play now, he's clearly like a good real life running back for depth. But I do not see like this like bell cow role. I don't think that the Chiefs currently have their future running back on the roster. I think that'll be addressed either in the offseason for sure, whether it's the draft or free agency or something. But it's like, you look at that and it's like, okay, he pops off, and Clyde's points were so dependent on touchdowns. You have to try and cash in on that again. And so they got left holding that. And it's like, what the hell is that? Clyde for Pollard straight up. Pollard's been popping off.
And then another one, same team, James Conner for Pollard straight up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, that's one of those where, to quote the master of the vision, slippery Pete, right? You have to learn to look at a trade from both sides and see what works for both teams, right? So if you're going to send an offer, maybe if you go on Keep Trade Cut or something, maybe that's I don't know, maybe that's like a fair value trade or something. I don't think it would be.
No.
Maybe Connor for Pollard, maybe that is technically like fair value, but
Let me check
with where your team's at, it's like Connor's an older running back. Pollard's about to hit free agency. He's young. Everybody's been waiting on him to take over a backfield. And, I don't know if Pollard can necessarily be like a bell cow, but we've seen him be able to put up big points in the split backfield with a true bell cow. So it's like, who could he really be paired up with that's better than Zeke to begin with anyways? So it's like, no matter where he goes, whether it's his backfield or it's a split backfield, he's still going to get those good, meaningful touches. And wherever he signs, they're going to be looking to use him, right? It's like with the Cowboys, all right, maybe they're not necessarily married to him. If somebody goes out and gives Tony Pollard money, they're looking to give him carries. So, that's one of those where it's like, why would you ever do that trade? So if you're the Suns, why would you even bother? That just felt like a last ditch effort. And again, it's just one of those where it's like, don't offend me with that off. Don't ever bring that into my kitchen, because I'm throwing that straight in the trash.
I got one more, because it's the one right above it. So you see when these things pile up, when I'm seeing offers, like this, you kind of throw up the caution sign. I'm looking at one here for Kirk Cousins, Sam Ellinger, Joshua Palmer, and a 2023 third.
Unserious.
Middle of the pack.
It's just unserious. It's just Bowen taking a shit, tinking around on his lineup.
And did Ellinger get dropped? Did he not just drop Ellinger?
I don't know, maybe. But genuinely asking, like, why would I want to hold that?
So he did drop Ellinger, and it's one of those two where I know that he was a hot commodity when he was announced a starter, and I was feeling really bad about how I literally just picked him up for free and dropped him. That felt like that could be a massive blunder on my part. And then once I saw him play against the Pats, it was like all like this huge feeling of relief just washed over my body, because I was like, all right, I don't care at all now. Because it was clearly just a play to see what they had at quarterback. Not only that, but it was like a last-ditch effort by Frank Reich to maybe buy himself some time. And I just think it was so hilarious that the moment he got fired, they just said, Matt Ryan, please come back. And they won. Not only did they immediately go back to Ryan, who seemed to be shut down for the season, they also won a game that they were like 6-point underdogs in. And, and nobody expected them to win, given, bringing in Jeff Saturday, and they had nobody on their staff had ever called a play in the NFL. So it's like the fact that Matt Ryan came back and won that game, it was hilarious. And, I think the thing with Bowen is that you can always tell when he's really out on a player, because then he's just hammering you with offers for this player. And it's like, all right, this is making me now want him so much less than I already did. And, so that's one of those. I mean, I think Bowen's been trying to package Palmer and my pick. He's really been trying to shop around my pick and, just throw whatever shit he can. But,
is your pick referring to the 2023 second?
Yes, my second rounder. He was really trying to shop that around the deadline.
Yes.
And rightfully so, right? I mean, a team that is probably going to be the third pick of the second round, and
That's 15th. Yeah, 15th overall.
yeah, well, 16th, I guess, right? Because Amaral has the he's going to have that extra pick.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and that's
Is
the thing too.
That's at the end of the first.
Yeah. So it'll be 113, or I might call it 200. I don't know. I'm undecided, but yeah. I mean, that's what I thought was interesting about some of the stuff Amaral did around the deadline too, because I mean, I think I don't know if he's necessarily out on the 23 class, but he was trading away, later first round picks and, really starting to stockpile in the 24 draft where he does have his own first rounder. So, he's kind of unloading these guys, allowing himself to tank for next year. And he still does have that pick at the end of the first. So, that with some of the seconds and thirds that he has, I think he'll be able to still make some noise in this draft while also really having his focus set on the 24 draft. Yeah, I mean, does that cover everything? We got anything else that we want to look at, Pete? McMorrow?
I was just going to say, McMorrow, you actually are not currently in the playoffs. You're 7th in points for right now. Mikey has snuck in front of you for that 6th playoff spot by about 30 points for. I mean, obviously deadline's passed, like no ads are going to happen. I just got to let it ride. But how do you feel about sneaking in? Do you think if you had to say yes or no right now, do you think you're sneaking in?
I think I could go there. Yeah.
I think you can too, because I think the big thing, it's almost like Tennessee. I'm not really sure what the rankings are right now, but whoever's ranked 5th in the college football rankings, you kind of have to still feel good because you got to figure whoever loses that Ohio State Michigan game is going to get knocked out. Right. And then I believe it's Tennessee that's 5th. So all of a sudden, if one of those teams loses, gets knocked out, then Tennessee could slide right in. And I feel like McMorrow's in that similar situation when it comes to the Bowens playoff race in the Gabagool division, where if Mikey can overtake Zach, then all of a sudden Zach drops into the lottery. McMorrow moves into that 6th spot. And it's also just close enough with Mikey that he could still just overtake him on points alone. So I still think that McMorrow can let it ride. I still think he can sneak in. And I actually kind of liked it. As much as I wanted to see him make these big moves, as somebody that has these picks of the Vibers and the shits, I actually like McMorrow trying to sneak in, maybe play some spoiler. I think that would, that could be very nice for my own personal stake.
Pete and I were talking about it. I mean, people coming at me with these offers, this, that, third, this guy will never be as valuable as he ever will be. We'll see about that week 15, 14, maybe. Who knows?
I love it. I love it.
I will say, I guess my closing question, were you sending offers at all, or were you just kind of waiting for everything to come your way?
I was texting. I was shooting out offers. I could go back into the DMs and say, what is this guy worth? I was texting Mikey on the side. As we always do, I text Mikey a decent amount. I know that's KB. I know that's one of your boys. He's one of mine now. I was making moves. I was talking to Pete. Seeing what he thought of some things. I was putting myself out there. I hate to say, like, could you always do more? Yes, but I wasn't going to sell myself short. So
you can't say you didn't try. Can't 100%. Say you didn't try.
It's good to see you putting in the work.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I there was one day at work, I got these cool standing desks. So I was standing there. I had my one screen.
I'm at my standing desk right now.
Oh, yeah. You standing up right now?
Yeah, I'm also standing up right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm Mr. Standing Desk.
Oh, look at you guys. I'm sitting down. But I'm standing there. I got my one screen, like my 2 screens working. One screen was just the trade. When you do on the website, the full screen. And I'll send you tomorrow. I have a notepad, and I was writing down what my team would look like next year with some of these trades going through in my head.
That's vision.
So like I tried doing the vision, we didn't get there. It's okay.
We got Fitz with the Excel sheet, Pete with the iPhone notes, and the McMorrow with the pen and paper notepad.
I'm a big pen and paper guy. So
you gotta see the vision. You gotta see your own vision.
100%.
All right. Well, I guess we can call it at that. We'll stay on. We got a couple other things to get to, but McMorrow, it was a pleasure to have you on.
Gentlemen,
we are in the presence of royalty because you are one of our 2 champions, and Pete and I are nowhere close. So I guess we do tip our cap and bow down to you in that sense. But thank you for coming on. As Pete had mentioned earlier in the episode, the vibes were certainly up, so we hope to have you back at some point. Pete, you got any closing remarks before we send them off?
I think I said all I need to, McMorrow. Appreciate your energy. Good to have you on. Like I said, we've had some, let's say, animosity, a little angry guests in the past. It's good to get a switch up. Happy to have you.
I'm just here to be a good time. You see me in the chat. You see me always. I send gifts. I send funny things. I laugh. I react. I'm active. I like doing as serious as people take fantasy football, it's all luck. It's not all luck. Obviously, our opportunity to go wherever.
Vision.
Pete, you're not calling plays. KB, you're not calling plays. You have no idea. You can project things. You have no idea, but it's fun. You treat it as fun. You don't get too stressed over these things. So.
Yeah, that's what I like about this league, right? Because it's so serious while also being a complete joke, and that's what I like about it.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah, I think everyone's in on it, right? Everyone's fully invested, and everybody knows that as serious as it gets, you also can't take it too serious, right? You have
to take it very seriously.
Yeah, but you also have to accept, this is a fantasy league, and we are blessed to just have such a wonderful league, a wonderful commissioner that just pours his heart and soul into this league, and
great content team.
Yeah, our kids will take over our teams. Their kids will take over their teams. At some point, we'll expand. I'm talking about getting, female owners in the league. I got a great vision for this, so I'm looking forward to it. But McMorrow, it was a pleasure to have you on, and we hope.
Thank you, fellas. Have me back whenever. I'm always here.
Sounds good.
All right, talk later. Pete, I'll text you tomorrow. You know the vibe.
Sounds good.
All right, Pete. We are going to get to the power rankings, but we do have one segment scheduled in between, and I'm not looking to make this too long of a segment. I'm really not here to argue about anything. You've kind of been hinting at it, for quite some time. You were talking about it, I think, maybe 2 weeks ago. We just want to have a little bit of Tua talk. So I'll the floor can be yours, and I'll kind of let you get us started.
Yeah, Tua talk, one of our most prevalent conversations on the show. Everyone remembers the episode last year, right? Me, you, George, ripped a Tua talk for, I don't know, probably like an hour. Tensions got super heavy. I got one statement here. I watched the episode back, the entire thing, and it boils down to 2 takes. I gave 2 takes. The first, I would choose Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett on the Steelers over Tua at that time, going forward in Dynasty. That was the first take. The second take was that Tua Tagovailoa will not start for Miami in 2024. Those were the 2 takes that I stuck my ground on. I'm not a man who forgets his takes. I've been trying to be good about admitting when I'm wrong. And there's something that needs to be said. Tua has been a top 4 quarterback in the league in Dynasty the last 3 weeks. So I gotta address the issue here. When it comes to Tua, right? QB7 right now for season average. We're going season average because he had missed a couple games, had a bye week, whatever. But QB7 for season average right now. Last year he was QB 23 according.
And despite missing 2.5 games, we should say he's QB 10 in overall points.
Right. So he's killing it this year. And the real difference is the touchdowns. Last year in 11 games, he played 11 games last year. He had 16 touchdowns total. This year through 7 games, he already has 18. So 2 more touchdowns in 4 less games. QB 23 to QB 7, top 4 QB the last 4 weeks. I cannot deny the success Tua has had. And it's really, KB, I got to give you a shout out. Like you said, he would improve around the coach, around the offense, around the weapons, and it actually happened. So was I wrong about Tua being a bum? Yes. Was I wrong about Tua stinking? Yes. Would I rather have Tua or Kenny? Because the take was Malik or Kenny on the Steelers. So the measuring stick right now is Kenny Pickett. This is a Kenny Pickett versus Tua debate right now for my take. Would I rather have Tua or Kenny on my dynasty team right now? I can't answer that question. I can't flip-flop on my take. I stuck my plate in the ground. Kenny Pickett's played 6 games. He's got a paper-thin offensive line. I can't flip-flop on my take and say I'd rather have Tua right now. Right.
Somebody like myself, I saw the vision and I was willing to give Tua time. And, I think a take I've been pretty consistent on was that I simply just didn't think Brian Flores was that great of a coach. And I meant that more so offensively.
Great.
Obviously he was a great when he was the pseudo defensive coordinator for us. Him and Steve Belichick were kind of splitting the duties, and, he seemed to really put a good defense together in Miami. But when you look back and you look at that offense that they had in Miami, it was just so basic. First of all, just the weapons that Tua had, right? Devontae Parker, he's, a good receiver, but to have him be your one and only, really receiver with any kind of talent, as a rookie, for Tua, and then with the offensive line that he had, it was so hard to get things going. You got guys like Mac Hollins, and you know, I mean, I can't even remember some of these guys' names that
think
were getting
maybe like
targets
Kenny
his rookie year.
Stills. I don't know.
Yeah, all of a sudden, you know, all of a sudden he gets a little bit of help. They're bringing Jalen Waddle, sets the rookie record. But when you watch the offense, it was, you know, even though Waddle was still able to put up these great stats, it was like the offense was just so close to the line of scrimmage. They weren't opening things up. They weren't getting blocked, and they had no run game to rely on. And that was the big issue, right? Too. He got hurt last year against the Bills. He got hurt on like the first drive, I want to say, and it was just because he was dropping back, and it was just, you know, one of the D linemen just had a wide open lane to him, hit him, and cracked one of his ribs. And, you know, it was one of those where, you know, when you have a coach that doesn't seem to believe in you, and then also you can't really get an offense going, and you have such limited weapons, it's tough to have success. And I think that we're starting to see in this league, right? A lot of people think, and, you know, you look at, you know, guys like Tom Brady and what they were able to do with, you know, Danny Amendola being your number one receiver in the postseason and stuff like that. You always think, well, you know, the talent can kind of, a good quarterback can kind of help everything rise above. But at the same time, we're seeing, you know, look at Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts is a guy we've talked about before, where last year he was putting up top 5 fantasy numbers, but at the same time, he was like always in danger of getting benched for Gardner Minshew.
Right.
All of a sudden, they clearly saw enough out of him to commit to him and say, this is our quarterback. They go out, they make a move for AJ Brown. Now look at him, right? Now he's playing at an MVP level. And it's no coincidence that Tua has experienced the same thing, right? They said, you know, we're committing to him. And I know you were trying to really get on me in the offseason when they said, when, you know, saying, well, if he was really their quarterback, they wouldn't feel the need to clarify that with the media. But at the same time, it was like there was such a narrative around Tua that the media couldn't not ask. And if Mike McDaniel is being asked, then of course he has to answer that, right? You know, but Tua, now they go out and they get Tyreek Hill. They start building, you know, a better offense. They get these running backs. They get a better scheme. They get running backs that fit into the scheme. And again, just like I said with Jalen Hurts, it's no coincidence that Tua is all of a sudden playing at an MVP level. And you know, I believe
I
second
don't
in
know about that,
odds.
but
What's that?
I don't know about MVP level, but I can't deny.
I'm just going off of the Vegas odds. He's currently the second favorite behind Mahomes to win the MVP.
It's
so,
impressive. Like QB7, 18 touchdowns in 7 games, top QB4 QB last 4 weeks. Something had to be said. Something had to be said.
I got a couple tweets too. Here's where Tua's 2022 season ranks across the NFL in the past decade. Past 10 years, this is how he ranks. Passer rating, third down passer rating, first, fourth quarter passer rating. His third down passer rating, by the way, is 149.8. What is it? 158.3 is the max.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter passer rating, seventh. Again, past decade. Red zone passer rating, seventh. Yards per attempt, fourth. And that was a big thing with Tua too, talking about his arm and, you know, how he couldn't, you know, feed these receivers like Tyreek Hill, who's, you know, makes such a great living going off a downfield pass and stuff like that. Here's where Tua ranks in some important passing categories. I believe this is just for the 2022 season. First in passer rating, first and third down passer rating, first and fourth quarter passer rating, first in red zone passer rating, first in yards per attempt. So, you know, I think this is just a common Lex Lumpkin W. We could chalk it up. I wouldn't say
it's common. I'd say it's uncommon. I mean, everyone was against him, and you kind of called the situation and him improving. I would say it was vision. It was vision.
It's a legendary Lex Lumpkin. Like you said, it's nice to plant your flag in somebody and then, you know, be right. So
it's the best feeling in Dynasty. Exactly.
Yeah. So I hope that someday you get to experience that as well. I hope Malik has that breakout. But until then, I'll run my victory laps for now.
That said,
as we move forward, I believe I have one of my necessary cornerstone quarterbacks. The rest is yet to be seen.
And then I will say the second take I had on that first episode was wrong. I said Tua won't start for Miami in 2024. No free ads, but a very popular sports podcast loves to talk about the guy debate. We're pretty sure Miami found their guy here. So I'm pretty sure that was wrong. That said, it remains to be seen. I'm sticking with it. I'm not going to flip flop on the take. 6 games into Pickett's career. He's the measuring stick. It's Pickett versus Tua for the rest of their careers to decide.
Forever tied. And I will say, talking about them finding their guy, so Tua's been mic'd up a couple times this year, but he was most recently mic'd up last week. And it's one of those where when you see those shots of him and McDaniel on the sideline talking, like they seem like they are like intertwined, and it feels like they are just one and the same, and they're now a team. So it makes me feel really good.
You see the new handshake they have?
No, I did not see that.
They like he's walking over to the sideline to go to McDaniel, and then they just both go like and interlock fingers.
Just terrible. That's just terrible. All right, all right. Let's keep the vibes high. Let's just get into our power ranking. So I did do 12 through 1, but I think we're gonna breeze through the first few.
Yeah.
As always, starting at 12, we got Pete, then we got Put That Shit On, then we got the Slow Stroke Kings. I don't think there's many comments still left to be had on that. I feel like we've kind of covered really all three of our deadline moves. And I think that it's, kind of admirable of the three of us, right? We're the three bottom teams. We were still the three. Well, I guess Amaral was the most active. I made one big deal, one kind of smaller deal, and then you made a one pretty big deal. We clearly have our vision kind of mapped out, and you're looking to build through the 23 draft. Amaral clearly is looking to build through the 24 draft. And then I'm kind of doing I'd say my patented rebuild on the fly, where instead of just waiting on the draft picks, I'm kind of just getting these young guys, and it's almost like I'm retroactively trading for those picks. And, I think it's three kind of interesting strategies. And, I kind of like the direction that all three of our teams are moving in. So despite being the bottom three for this year, I think that we're still in really good positions, speaking from a dynasty perspective. At number 9, I have the most athletic Suns. We've kind of gone into everything about their deadline, and how we felt about it. They're not quite as bad as the three of us. They do still have a little bit of an outside shot at sneaking into this playoff race. Even if they are, and I covered this in my blog, even if they do sneak in, my hopes are not high. I think McMorrow is a team that's much better suited, and I think that when push comes to shove, and at the end, after the next 3-4 weeks, McMorrow will consistently put up more. And I don't think the Suns will be able to catch him, but you never know. All it takes is one massive week, and that flips everything around. And then with them, I have Wallace ranked. So Wallace is 8th. I'd say he's more competitive. Obviously, took a little bit of a hit with, Breece Hall getting injured, and then Kenneth Walker missing this week. Could maybe change a few things, in terms of the points for race, and maybe move them a little bit further out. Definitely a competitive team. Just not really looking to win it this year, and really eyes on the prize next year. You got anything to say about those two teams before we kind of get into the playoff hunt?
No, I mean, that first 6 is pretty much, and there's nothing really to say. If Wallace had Breece, maybe I consider him a position to be in the playoffs or make a run. He is points for 8th right now in front of Bowen, who's points 9. But without Breece, I don't see it. I don't think Wallace is seeing it. I shut the door on both those guys last week.
Yep. All right, let's move into the playoff race then. So there it really seems like there's a top 7 that's kind of fighting for it.
Yep.
It was a little tricky. I initially had one team ranked here, and then I crossed it out, and I ended up going with McMorrow. I think that was more because I realized that McMorrow was 7th in points. I still think, as we were talking about just before we sent him off, I think that he's still in a good position because of how this Gabagool divisional race is going to play out. And even then, I think we both feel like he could still catch any of these, or at least Mikey's team, to get that 6th spot. But all it takes is Mikey getting that divisional lead, and then I think McMorrow almost has that 6th seed kind of in a chokehold. It's still going to be close with him and Zach, and Jonathan Taylor's back. So I don't think we should be counting the Zits out at all. But it's definitely going to be an interesting race to keep an eye on, and I think that these 7, 6, and 5 seeds, I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, but I think, McMorrow, Mikey, and the Zits kind of fighting it out for this last spot. And then, of course, that 3rd seed divisional winner as well will be interesting to see. At 6, I do have Go Tigers. I got Mikey Bowen, Josh Winsper at number 6. And then at 5, I have the Zits. So as we've covered plenty on this episode, it's really just going to come down to if Mikey can catch Zach in the wins column, because he does have more points than him. So any tiebreaker would go Mikey's way as it stands. But again, I'm never counting out the Zits. I've learned that time and time again. I do think that they just kind of took a little bit of a step back with Taylor being hurt. With him coming back, that could be a bit of a resurgence. I did like their deadline move, getting rid of Trey Lance and adding Amon Ra. That's some extra strength for this little postseason run. You got anything to say about these kind of last 3 fighting it out for these spots?
Yeah, first and foremost, off the top, Michael Bowen, I'm addressing you directly here. I was wrong last week to shut the door on your playoff hopes. I shut the door last week. I named the 6 teams that were in. I was ready to call it. I was wrong there. KB, it seems like you put the pieces together, but to go one step further with these 3 teams. So Bowen is currently 1 game ahead of Mikey in the Gabagool division race. This week, is the last week that we play other teams. Then it just goes back to the last three games are divisional games. Gabagool division is least in the league. You got me and Jalo. You got to assume the Zits and the Tigers are both going to beat me and Jalo. That's a pretty fair assumption, right?
Mm-hmm.
This week, Mikey plays Wallace. Pretty sure he's going to win that. And Bowen plays Big Brain. If I was a betting man, I'd probably have Big Brain. So if things go as projected, which we know they don't in Dynasty, but if they go as projected, they're tied at the record this week. And then next week, they go head-to-head on Thanksgiving while they're going to be sitting on the same couch enjoying the same turkey. So this is a pretty good like drama here. You got two brothers on Thanksgiving going head-to-head with the same record for the divisional race. And points for, like you said, it's not going to be a factor. It's whoever's going to win that game, I think. So for me, the Gabagool division comes down to a Bowen versus Bowen matchup on Thanksgiving. McMorrow just has to beat the loser of that matchup in points for. So if I'm looking at these three teams, like I can't get behind the Zits. Can't get behind the Zits. They're 7-3, but they're 9th in points for. I don't think 9th in points for wins a chip. I look at their team. I love the names on the roster, but then I look at the points for, and I'm just like, points for 9th doesn't win a chip. So if I had to make a prediction on it, I think Mikey beats Bowen in the head-to-head next week on Thanksgiving, takes the Gabagool division, and then it's McMorrow versus Bowen in points for to get that 6th spot.
Sorry, I was watching. It looked like Christian Watson was going for a deep ball. No, I agree with everything you say. I gotta say, well, I guess I don't totally agree with everything. I just have this feeling that it's gonna be. I mean, it is tough. It is tough. The scenario that you just laid out, it does just feel like this is Mikey's for the taking, but it feels like everything always goes the Zits way. So until I see otherwise. I got to give them the advantage, and they do still have that leg up right now. So even though, like you said, it does project to kind of fall in Mikey's favor, you can never really count on it to go that way. But
and I mean,
I just feel in my heart of hearts that McMorrow is going to make it into this playoff race. So right now, I got to say, I think at the end of the day, Mikey will be the odd man out. But I mean, this is going to be a very, very interesting race to see. Really, it really is just who gets the 6th spot, but of course it's very dependent on that divisional race. All right, getting into the top 4, this is very hard. This is very hard for me to do. I really just couldn't figure out. I mean, so the way I look at it now is I always try to kind of keep it where it is based on the standing. So if you have the divisional lead, then I got to give you the upper hand and all that stuff. But right now, I feel like because we're locked into the top 4, or seemingly so, I feel like that's safe to say at this point in the season. I could get maybe a little more creative with how I wanted to rank these teams in the top 4 and not just, maybe, I always say I try not to predict things in these power rankings, but at this point I feel like I can. So right now I went with at 4, the occasional Vibers. And that may come as a shock to some people because of how powerful that they've been. But I have some concerns. I have some concerns with Josh Allen, and I'm really just not sold on that elbow. And I know that he still put points up last week, and he made it work. But we're just seeing him just play such ugly football, and I feel like that's kind of part of the Josh Allen experience, right? Josh Allen giveth and he taketh away, and for all these stupid interceptions that he throws, he's also going to make the most insane play ever and completely win you a game, right? But I just have my question marks. And then I also just look at, their running backs, and you see Fournette, who it's starting to really look like his job's being overtaken, by Rachaad White. Most certain Wilson, it's just going to be one of those things where you have 2 running backs in the same backfield and they're really splitting these carries. And, maybe they can just both put up huge points and it doesn't matter which one you start or if you start both, but that can always just be a pain in the ass. And then you're just looking at the rest where all of a sudden, they're starting Cam Akers and Kareem Hunt, and it felt like going into the season they were so strong at running back, and of course that was headed by Javonte Williams, but he's been gone for a few weeks now, and of course he's done for the rest of the season. And I start to just have some doubts, right? Kyler Murray hasn't been, this he just feels like he's having a little bit more of a disappointing season. It feels like he's kind of starting to regress maybe a tiny bit. The points appear to still be there, but this team doesn't feel as strong as they felt at the beginning of the season, or even a month and a half ago. So I just have my concerns about them, and if they'll be able to truly compete. And I do feel like it's really splitting hairs in this top four, but right now I have to put them fourth. They're third in the division. They got 6 wins. It just feels like it's going to be hard for them to get that seed. So we're also looking at a team that's probably going to be, a wild card team to begin with. So right now I have the Vipers at 4. How's that make you feel?
I softly agree. The running back room is a real problem. I mean, going into the season, you had Akers, Lenny, and Javonte. Like
They felt like unstoppable, right?
Unstoppable, right?
Yeah.
Then boom, Javonte goes down. Lenny lost the backfield. I got to say credit to me here. Credit to me. I went back. I watched the tape after week 3 of the NFL season, our power ranking show. I saw the snap percentage go 60% Fournette, 40% White. I said I thought White was going to take over that backfield, and it did happen. I also think Lenny's hurt, right? I think Lenny's hurt right now too, as well. And
I think he is. He was definitely hurt in the last game. I know he had a wrap around his core.
Yeah.
Right. Last week was the Germany game.
I think so.
Yeah. So I know he had a wrap. He was dealing with some stuff, and I think he came into it with that. And then obviously it seems like he aggravated something as well.
Yeah. And I mean, we saw Tupins win the chip last year with strictly elite quarterbacks and wide receivers. But this running back room is so bad that I think it almost forces you to get insane production out of your almost perfect production out of your quarterbacks and wide receivers to compete with these top 3 teams. I mean, sure, if like Allen and Murray having a mediocre week or whatever, you could beat a Pete, you could beat a Wallace, you could beat a Suns, but you're not going to be able to compete with Big Brain, Simcoe, and Tupins unless those QBs and wide receivers play perfect. Now they do get the Kelsey boost. Like no one has tight end points besides Kelsey right now, so like they do get the Kelsey boost, but the running back room is a problem, and it forces their quarterbacks and wide receivers, I think, to play at like an elite level perfect for 3 weeks in the playoffs, which I don't know if that could happen. So they're 6-4. They dropped down to third in the division.
Yeah, they got a little bit of a year 1 big brain thing going on too, where they just haven't had any bad weeks. Like they still remain consistent, and it looks like their lowest point total so far has been a 111.24. Last week they had 112.42.
Yeah. And like I said, that's enough. That's enough to beat a me, a you, a Suns. But the other 3 teams are putting up 120, 130, 140, 150. It's
like, when you're putting up those points, that's kind of, you're getting into the territory that my team was in last year, where
exactly,
I'm gonna put up that 110 to 120 every week. So if you can't do that, obviously you're gonna lose. But I'm also not going to be able to run with the big boys that are putting up 140, 150. So, consistency can only get you too far. And, the same thing, going back to Tupins and what they've been able to do with their running backs. I think the thing that kind of helps them is that they were still, even though that, they found decent output from the running backs, they were so thin that they could only play those guys where, having this depth where it's just a bunch of kind of mid-tier guys. Now all of a sudden you get into that trap where maybe you overthink it and it's like, all right, who the hell do I play? And, maybe, you're leaving too many points on the bench, and, they are starting to slip a little bit, right? They seem to have this, really commanding lead when it came to points for, I think Tupins might've passed them for a second, but now all of a sudden Big Brain's in number 1, and we'll get to Big Brain in a second. But yeah, it just feels like the Vipers are kind of losing that stranglehold that they seemed to have a couple of weeks ago. And, with it looking so unlikely that they'll be able to get that divisional title this year, I just had to put them at 4.
Yeah, I like them at 4.
Yeah, so moving forward, this is another one that maybe would be a little controversial. I got Lamar in the shits at 3. I was a little concerned with his inability to make any moves at the deadline. As I do cover in the blog, and as we covered on here, he was certainly trying to get some deals done. But I just feel like with where he's at with his roster, it's like I said, earlier, right? He can't add any meaningful picks onto some of these guys like DJ Moore, Kyle Pitts to entice an owner to go over the top and, give him whatever piece it is that he's trying to get. But at the same time, this is a strong team, and it looks like they're in a pretty good spot. They also have a 2-game lead on the division, so it'll be tough for Big Brain to catch them. So they're probably going to be, top 2 seed regardless. But I do just worry. I feel like, this has been our preseason number 1 pick, and we haven't really wavered off of that, but I'm starting to have some concerns. I will say, I just feel like it's one of those where, it's another one where we get to the end of the season and I'm suddenly looking at this compared to other teams, and I just don't feel like they're maybe as dominant. I was maybe hoping to see some more action at the deadline, maybe add another piece and get aggressive, but they just weren't able to do anything to really separate themselves. And, with them not being in the point leads anymore, and really, I mean, they're 60 points about off the lead for points, and they're behind let's see, 1268. Yeah, I mean, they're behind all the other teams, the big brains and the pins and the vibers. So, for those reasons, I just had to bump the shits down to number 3, or I don't even know. I think maybe I had them at number 2 last time. But how are you feeling about our preseason pick?
I'm sticking with it. So I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum of your take. This would have been my one. I mean, we always say splitting hairs when it comes down to these guys, but I was looking at Simcoe's roster and I just think it's so well balanced. Like you look at Vibers and Two Pins, they're all in on this quarterback wide receiver strategy and just a graveyard of running backs. And then you look at Big Brain and they're all in on running backs, but they have a graveyard of quarterback and wide receivers. Like, okay. Simcoe's team is just very balanced. You got Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Barkley and Jacobs at running back, Hopkins, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Mike Evans at wide receiver. Pitts stinks at tight end, but I just think he's so balanced. So like I see him when he gets his full, like we get full rosters in the playoffs, because obviously it's been very heavy bye weeks last couple of weeks. I think his team's the most balanced. I think he has the lowest floor of these teams. Maybe he doesn't have the boom, but I just have the most confidence in this roster just because how well balanced it is.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sold on that. I'm actually going to flip flop. I'm going to move the shits up to number 2.
Let's go.
The shits, they are going to be my number 2 team. I still don't. I really like this number 1 team more, and this will give it away. Now moving down from 2 into 3, it's team 2 Pins. Still a very strong team, and it's another thing that I cover in the blog where I don't feel like, I did have 2 Pins as a winner at the deadline just because I felt like they made the moves that they had to make. But those moves were more to prevent them from completely losing their grip on this season. Obviously, Jamar Chase has been out for X amount of weeks, and we're unsure of when he's actually going to be able to come back. Kupp, if I had Kupp, I would not be expecting to see him back this season. And if he's able to come back, then that is just a million cherries on top of the sundae, right? But at this point, it's always been a concern with some of these top tier teams where once the injuries kick in, they start to lose it. They are still number 1. They're still the number 1 overall seed, number 1 in their division, 8-2. They continue to get things done. They've now won 6 straight matchups, which is just insane. And, I like their moves, right? They went out, they got Sanders, who of course put up a dud last week. They also they got themselves Lockett to kind of fill that void. And, maybe he's not the dynasty piece that Ayuk is, but he's definitely putting up more points than Ayuk is this season. I thought that those were very good moves, but I thought that was more to keep them afloat than it was to propel them to the top. And I didn't feel like any of these top 4 teams did anything to put themselves over the top. Of course, Big Brain, they did make that move for Goddard, and then,
we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And in 2 seconds, he got hurt. But these top 2 teams that I originally had them ranked top 2 just because these were the teams that I saw actually try and do something at the deadline, and they did do something, and maybe it didn't necessarily work out for Big Brain, but I like these moves from the Pins. I still think that they can put things together because of of course their core, Mahomes and Herbert, and then who has been a little weak this year, I will say. But then, even despite not having Kupp and not having Chase, who, it sounds like he still has a good chance to come back and, be back for the playoffs, which at this point is all that matters for these teams. I still think they can put it together. I mean, Stephon Diggs is great. Mahomes and Allen can put up a ton of points. Gibson, they have seemed to find a way in Washington to get Robinson and Gibson to both be effective. And then Miles Sanders as well. It's a run heavy team. And for some reason, they did not go run heavy last week, and look at how it cost them, right? So I think that the Eagles, they'll get back to their roots. Sanders will, recoup some of that value that was expected out of him coming off the thing. But I did just bump him down. I'm sure George will take that as a sign of disrespect, and rightfully so. How are you feeling about Team 2 Pins?
Wait, what team are we talking about?
2 Pins, who are now number 3 ranked instead of number 2.
Nothing to say.
All right, yeah, I guess I guess you're just following suit, and I guess you're right. You're not allowed to talk on their team, right?
Nothing to say.
So we'll move on. We'll move on to number 1. As you can tell, that would be Big Brain LLC. Very sneaky. I did not realize that they had gotten into number 1 in points for. They are still 2 games back in the division. That will be tough. They do have a head-to-head matchup. So they have this matchup with the Zits right now. They have Wallace next week. They got the head-to-head with Lamar on the shits, and then they play me in week 14. So that's a very winnable stretch, and they could certainly win out and get themselves to 11 wins. I just don't know if Simcoe is going to be able to drop, the 2 games to, it would take 2 games to drop just to get them to the tiebreaker. Simcoe would have to go 1-3 down the stretch, and Big Brain would have to win out just for them to get the division outright. So Simcoe's got McMorrow, then he's got me, then he's got the head-to-head with Big Brain and Wallace. So some similar opponents. It's going to be tough for Big Brain to get it, but like I said, I feel like we're locked into this top 4 now, and even if Big Brain's out, out of the top 3 and they're a wild card team, I still think that's such a strong team coming into it. And I think that they're kind of finding their stride. And McCaffrey has really gotten almost a second life now that he's in San Francisco. And then, they seem obsessed with using him. And, they continue to put up, they put up 151 points in back-to-back weeks, put up 117 in a loss last week. But of course, Mikey had 152. Tough to win those anyways. How are you feeling about Big Brain as we get ready for, this home stretch of the regular season?
Yeah, I'm very surprised that no quarterback wide receiver acquisition for Big Brain. I really thought they were going to make a move at quarterback wide receiver. For me, this team comes down to the quarterbacks. Like with those 4 running backs, I feel like you have such a safe floor. One of them is going to go off for 25. Mm-hmm. One of them probably 21, 22, maybe an 18, and the low probably a 13. So like, I don't know, call that 50 to 60 points, almost pretty much not guaranteed, but like it's every single week. Every single week, they're getting 50 to 60, even more sometimes, out of just those 4 running backs. It gives them such a safe floor. I just think it comes down to the quarterbacks. I mean, Rodgers QB 23 right now, Tanny QB 30, and that's season averages, so take out the injuries and bye weeks. Heine QB 28. I just don't. This is a quarterback dominated league, and I don't see this team. I don't see this team winning a championship with those quarterbacks right now. But I mean, we said it a couple of weeks ago, I think, or maybe mid-season. This team is the McMorrow. This is the year 1 McMorrow model. It's ride the running backs and take what you can get from the quarterbacks. So that's what they're going with. I personally, I just don't like quarterbacks. That's what scares me. It's going to come down to those guys. But just to reference the Goddard trade, that was all-time trade out of Big Brain to hit accept on the trade offer for Goddard, and then literally the next play, it was maybe 2 minutes. The face mask, and then I don't even know.
I was trying to figure out, like, it could not have been more than 10 real life minutes.
No,
it was almost immediate.
It was almost immediate, like literally immediate. And his timetable to come back is, they said, hopeful to week 14 or 15-ish. Hopeful for that.
Yeah.
So like, say it's one more game, week 16. Our playoffs are 14, 15, and 16. Maybe they get him back for the playoffs. But then again, if I'm the Eagles, I'm probably going to have the 1 or 2 seed. I'm probably going to have a bye going into the NFC Championship. I'm not rushing my star tight end back for the last 2 games of the regular season. The last 2 games of our regular season, I guess. No. Yeah, their last 2 games of the regular season are playoffs.
Yeah, our playoffs.
So, like, if I'm them, I'm not expecting to get Goddard back. They just lost Ertz. It's just all-time bad luck. And I kind of just love it for Big Brain, because we always come at them for being crippled by injuries around the playoffs, and it just seems like they're getting the bug right now. So, I would never hope for an injury. I would never hope for an injury. Never, ever. Never.
Yeah.
Ever.
I guess, like, so
but if one of those running backs go down, they got problems.
Yeah. So the one thing when it comes to their quarterbacks was, as I was saying, on the McMorrow segment, I had reached out to them just because I wanted to see what was out there, what kind of they were hearing, and if they were trying to get Brady, and, what they were all hearing and everything like that. And one of the big things that we were talking about with it being too late to really make that Brady deal was, and we had talked about this, privately, but, sure, down the stretch, I'd rather have Tom Brady than Ryan Tannehill. But at the same time, we got a pretty big sample size for Brady right now. And when it comes to what he's putting up per week, I'd never count him out to suddenly heat up, especially when, it's December and everything like that. But, he's still putting up the same as Rodgers and Jimmy Garoppolo and, even Tannehill, outside of, a couple outlier weeks. But, it just wasn't worth it for them to make that payment. And, how much better did Brady really make them make? Maybe it raises their floor and he's a much more trustworthy option, I'd say, for sure. But at the same time, I think that they're going to be able to make it last with Garoppolo, right? He's still putting up 15, 16, 17 points a week. Rodgers, I'd say, is probably doing the same, right? Yeah, 17, 19. He's always in those teens. So I feel like the quarterbacks can keep him afloat just because of how dominant these running backs are. But as always, the moment that a running back injury happens, this team could just completely fall apart.
Yeah, so I honestly think I undercut Big Brain earlier too. I was saying 50 to 60 out of those 4 guys is probably more like 65 to like 75, I think. If they average like 18, the 4 of them, that's 70-ish right there. So like, yeah, like I said, that floor is there. That floor is there for Big Brain. I would have them second in the power rankings behind Simcoe. but I'm just saying the QB situation is not championship worthy, in my opinion. Not to say that they couldn't.
Yeah. All right. I think that kind of covers everything. I'll go down the list one more time, starting at 12-1. As always, we got Slippery Pete, Put That Shit On, the Slow Stroke Kings, the Most Athletic Sons, I Love My Mom, Carson Wentz, Go Tigers, Gino and the Zits, the Occasional Vibers, Team Two Pins, Lamar and the Shits, and at number 1, Big Brain LLC. Pete, you got any closing comments?
No, I think that's it. To the listeners, happy Thanksgiving. Hug your family. Enjoy it. Watch some football. Are we off next week? You giving me a day off, boss, next week?
Yeah, I think yeah, you know what? Yeah. We'll close the league office down for the week. And we give back to our employees here at friendswhogamblemedia.com or whatever the fuck we call ourselves. That's what I never know. I never know what to say. I think I'm going to go with Friends Who Gamble Media when I say sources tell whatever, because it's always annoying typing out the website name and
Yeah.
shit like that. But all right, Slippery Pete, Lex Lumpkin. It's another great power ranking episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks, I guess. For
Mock Draft Monday.
We got Mock Draft Monday coming. As I said, my blog is up on the site. I just got to get it on the link tree, and then I'll post it. I'll probably end up just posting it tomorrow. I look forward to coming back, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. All right, let's stop this recording now. Stop this recording now.